Right then guys, sorry for the lack of content on here recently, for the simple reason I've just not been going. I think I've been about 5 times since the end of August, but I've got a match to show you. It's the last match I fished at the start of November, a place called Moor Monkton Pools, which I've not filmed before. Some of you might have heard it as Cartvale back in the day, before the Leeds club took it over, but this was at the start of November and just a really nice mild spell. And this is a venue I've fished quite a lot actually. I've only started going there in the last sort of 3 years, but I've fished it quite a lot, especially in the autumn and the winter. And it's definitely more of a club water than a kind of an overly stocked cart water, and that suits me down to the ground. It's lovely fishing. And typically there's 3 lakes there. There's sort of a bigger lake, a snake lake, and a little lake with a couple of islands. And yeah, as I say, it's not a big weight venue, so in summer a good weight will be anything from 60 to 100 pound, low 100 pounds. In winter it can get quite difficult. You're looking at 20 to 40, 60 pound. Obviously the worse it gets, the colder it gets. But yeah, so this was a Sunday match a few weeks ago, and it was on the front pool, which is just as you drive in. It's a little 18-19 peg lake is that, with 2 islands in the middle. And 2 weeks before that, sorry, I'd been and I'd won the match from front pool. It was a rover across a couple of lakes then. It was a really windy day, and I think I had 7 carp and 4 bream for £38. And I caught all on the pole that day with a bit of shelter from the wind in my face. It was a really windy, rainy day. And it was completely opposite this time. It was, as I say, calm, flat, really, really flat. It's rare you get a day as calm as this. And I'd drawn peg. There was only about a dozen of us, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a big match, and we're sort of all around this lake. There wasn't much space. So I've drawn peg 59, and there was 4 pegs I wanted to avoid in the bag, I think, and I managed to avoid them, and I was quite happy with this peg 59. It's in the middle of a gap in the middle of the lake, and it's sock on really where you want to be in winter. When it gets cold, the fish tend to huddle up in the middle of the gap, and the 58, 59, 60, and opposite 68 and 70, 68, 70 and 67 are the pegs you want to be on. So yeah, quite happy with that. Not much space, as I say. There were people either side of me, 5 yards either side of me, but that's fair enough though. You put anglers where fish are, especially in winter. But yeah, on a small waters like this, as I say, it's probably only to the middle of the rope there in the middle. It's about 25 metres maybe. So yeah, maybe not even that now, probably 23. But yeah, it's definitely started on a pole, just purely because I didn't want to chuck straight out and destroy my peg straight away. Put too much pressure too early on your peg, which a lot of people do. I see a lot of people on these smaller venues, they start the match by chucking out a feeder or a bomb, virtually to the limit of the peg. And all you do when you do that is, yeah, you're probably going to catch one straight away that's probably living out there. But you're going to do more harm than good, because you're simply going to push the fish too early. They've got nowhere to go basically. You're going to push them either side of you or the other side of the lake beyond your peg. So it's much better to manage your peg in a way that works your way out into the lake than go all out and cast straight out into the limit of your peg immediately. So I started on the pole, which still gave me several meters of water to back off to, where the fish could back off to, and I fully expected to get a fish quite quickly, really, a carp, because it was 15 degrees that day. There was no wind. I started at 40.5 meters with hard pellets, 6mm on the hook. Just not feeding many at all, just a few, and just waiting for a bite. And you'll notice here as well, I'm using a bump bar, which, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend you doing. There's only a few instances in which you need to use one of those, and only when you kind of, you maybe struggling a bit with a long pole due to health or what have you. The other instance I recommend you do it is in, first of all, windy conditions, when your pole tips, getting blown to bits, maybe a crosswind, and a bump bar really helps you to control the pole. And also when you're fishing when you're nailing a bait still for fish like skimmers and bream, and you lay on over depth and hold a big rig still. We call that ligging on in the north, ligging on for bream and skimmers. But any other situation, I just think they get in the way, so I don't usually use one. So I gave it half an hour on this line, and I had one tiny bite off a roach, and that was it, which was surprising. But if I was going to get one, I was probably going to get one in that first 20 minutes or so. Now my next move was to pick up a waggler rod, which was the only rod I got out of the bag. I left the bomb and feeder in there because with it being so flat, I just couldn't see them working. On a small shallow venue like that, fish can see and hear everything that happens when it's that calm. And with it being so warm, I really fancied the fish were going to be in them upper layers, which are the warmer layers in winter. They warm quickest. So next move was on the waggler. I didn't feed anything to start with, just relying on the splash of the float. Didn't risk feeding anything because at this moment in time, I hadn't seen a carp caught yet. So I was casting sort of this rope across the middle, so I had my line clipped up, so I didn't want to snag the rope. And about 5 or 6 casts in, I got a fish, which was sort of immediately on the splash, sort of about first 5 seconds of the float landing. A nice carp there.
Summer feeding then. Was that your first bite then?
So 20 minutes later, and I got another one on a 6mm hard pellet on the waggler. Still not fed anything. It just came a bit deeper, that one. Probably had to wait a little bit longer. But I had 2 fish. I don't think anyone else had caught any carp that yet. So I was doing quite well. And I just kept plugging on the way on the waggler. And kept a few pellets still fed on the pole line just in case I needed to drop back on it.
Caught again, have you, Ben? Hey?
Only a little stock here.
It don't matter. Ain't going to be many caught today, is there?
Now the fish had backed off a bit beyond my reach to the other side of the rope, and that was my cue really to start feeding and flicking a few pellets in. Not many at all, you know, not like summer, so just literally a few 6 mils in, just make a little bit of noise without going mad. You know, you don't want to be pouching loads of pellets in this time of year, because the fish have had a lot of bait this year from pleasure anglers, and you know, it's only shallow venues like this, sort of 3 foot deep, 4 foot max. So yeah, don't want loads of bait. And I've got you know, 5 minutes after starting feeding, I've hooked another carp. Sort of 3-4 pounder again, so nice fish to catch. Now all the while I've been fishing, I've been feeding a few casters short. I just had some old maggots that had turned to casters. They weren't particularly brilliant casters, but I was just throwing them in just as a bit of a throwaway, 6 or 7 metres, as you can get some good roach in this lake. And halfway through the match I'd noticed a few swirls from quality fish were swirling for them, you know, 6-7 metres out. I got off my box and put a shallow rig on, and with a 6 to 8 elastic slick, and flicked it in, and immediately had a 6 ounce roach. and it was solid, to be honest, in spells. It was really, really good fishing. There are some big silverfish in there. It's strange, but you don't seem to see them when it gets really cold. But as I say, it was still 15 degrees. They were feeding, and it made sense to me to fish that while I rested the waggler line. So I've had a couple of spells fishing the roach line, and they were good fish, as you can see from some of the footage. Some of the roach were, approaching half a pound, 10 ounce, some of them, real weight builders. And it just fished casters for them, single caster banded on a strung out rig I'll show you later. Just flicking it in, holding it tight, throwing a few casters round it, and then I'd go back on the waggler and keep the roach line fed. So I just kept both lines fed, just to somewhere to rest my my waggler line, because it was evident that I was gonna have to keep coming off it if I was going to keep catching, because the fish were obviously kept backing off and then coming back into my peg, so I couldn't just plunder that waggler line. No.
Why are they all roach bigger than all?
What are you fishing with? There you go then.
You're on the telly, are you?
No, my old casters.
Oh, right, yeah.
So I've got another fish on the waggler, again after resting the line for half an hour. There's one there that's come in. I've been flicking a few pellets in, a few casts in, and I've got it. And this has been my match then for the rest of the day. I've come back on the roach, caught some nice fish again, soon building a weight with the roach, and then when I've needed to, I've gone back out for a carp. Yeah, I'm mounting on. Not two down to your right. Yeah, that rod length. Yeah. Just keep flicking it in. It comes out and then it drops a bit. Just flicking them in, you know. Yeah.
They're building it up, aren't they, Dave?
Nice to catch, aren't they?
What are they, 4 or 5 ounces?
Some of them are, yeah.
Can't see the next boat.
So come the weigh in, my roach have gone £13 odd, which considering I only fished for them for probably an hour 20, an hour and a half tops combined in perhaps 2 or 3 spells, was really good fishing. If you were to do that all day, you know, I'd have had a really good weight of roach. It might have taken a while to build a swim up and bring them really shallow, but yeah, nice weight of roach there to back my carp up. I've ended up with 12 carp as well, which went £49. So they were about £4 each. So obviously they've gone £62, which has won the match. I think I've won the match in 7 out of the last 8 times I've been on that lake. So it's a really kind lake to me, is that one, that front pool. So I'm just going to show you my gear. And my rod was an 11-foot Horizon Pro Waggler with a 3000 reel and £5 mainline. And I've used this rod a couple of times now, and they're really fine and really nice rods. They're more all-around rods, I'd say, than out-and-out carp rods. But they're lovely in winter, and lovely when you're getting F1s and a mix of fish, especially with small hooks, you know, and light lines. If you're going out all for carp in summer, then I'll probably use my Ethos pellet waggler rods, which have just got a bit more backbone to them. But these are really lovely rods, lovely fine tips as well. You just got to be careful with the tips because they are quite fine, but they are lovely parabolic action and just quality rods. And the waggler I used, and this is really important, was a 3 gram, it's a Drennan Clear pellet waggler. I think it's a number 1 or something like that. And the angler to my right used a much heavier waggler and not a clear one, like a loaded one, a more conventional pellet waggler. And he's come second in the match with 4 carp. Your waggler makes a heck of a difference, especially when it's calm like that. So I'm looking to use the lightest I physically can get away with, so the least splash, least likely to spook fish. Now don't get me wrong, bigger waters, winds, stuff like that, then you're going to want bigger wagglers. But this kind of finesse waggler fishing, as I say, clear so it doesn't spook fish, and very, very light. And I had to force it a bit to get my float there. And if there'd been a bit of a wind on, I'd not have been able to get away with that, because by the time, as I said, when you force a waggler a bit too much, a really light waggler, the line takes a little bit of time to sort of catch up and fall down with the float. And if there's any kind of wind on, then that immediately creates a bow. So that's why, if there'd been a bit of a wind on, I'd probably stepped up to 3.5 gram or 4 gram, so I could keep my line straight when it landed. But because it was flat calm, I could get away with that really light one. And I think I only missed 2 bites out of 14. So yeah, just kept the line laying on the surface. Don't sink it, because you want to get you're looking to get that bite on the drop, come to the splash. So cast it out and let the line go on the surface. If you sink the line, then you're moving the bait unnaturally. You're missing that chance. Okay, so as you can see, there are a little tiny gap as well between the float stops on the main line, and that's just purely so the waggler can fold over parallel with the line when you strike and cast. It just makes the rig work much cleaner. Your bites and you're striking and you're casting. And that was just down to a 16 hook. I think it was an MXC 4, an eyed hook, and an 016 hook length. And just for those who are interested in my the roach rig, and as I say, it's quite unusual to catch like that, really, because in winter you don't tend to see them fish very often. But as I say, they gave away their presence by swirling and things. So it was just a tiny little, it's a 4x10, might be cut down, might be 4x8 that as well. It's a tiny little cut down. It's like some kind of RW Maggie or Winter Maggie is that, I think. Just cut it down for shallow fishing, because it cocks quicker then. If your stem's too long, then you might have to mend it. So short floats for shallow fishing. And then I've literally just strung my about 5 number 10 shot out, just below the, on top of the hook length, sorry. And that was how they wanted it, just a strung rig. Sometimes you can get away with bulking when the fish are feeding really well and really shallow, you can bulk your rig like, on top of the hook length or 8-inch away or something like that, but they didn't want it like that on Sunday. I just fished, I think that's an 18 hook with a little band on for casters. Interesting that, but banded caster for big silvers is mega. You just don't, if you miss bites, it's usually from little fish, so that's why you tend to get the bigger stamp fish on banded casters, because the little fish can't get the hair rig properly in the mouths a lot of the time, but the bigger fish can, and you barely need to rebait either, so it's just mega is that. So yeah, that was my, I think I was about 0.10 hook length, something like that, and 6 to 8 slick. So yeah, that's my 2 rigs that did the damage that day. That's it really for me for match fishing for the winter. I'm having the winter off, I've decided. We'll be doing a little bit of pleasure fishing for a few hours, so hopefully I'll bring you a few short session films. Also, I might take a waggler rod out and do a waggler fishing film specifically on waggler fishing for carp in winter, because it is quite complex and quite a few bits and tips to it. So if you want to see that, let me know in the comments, please. Otherwise, take care, guys, tight lines, and a very Merry Christmas to you all for next month.